What happens when a duchess becomes the punchline and nobody's laughing? Picture this: a cold Saturday night in New York, stage lights glowing, the air thick with anticipation. And then it drops. One line, delivered with a smirk so slight, it barely flickered. Colin Jost, SNL's golden boy, fires off a joke so razor-sharp, it slices through the PR-crafted fairy tale of Meghan Markle like a scalpel. The crowd roars. The camera pans. And somewhere, in the soft-lit warmth of a Montecito mansion, a TV is quickly turned off. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But it was too late. The damage was done. Because that one line didn't just make the crowd laugh. It opened a wound. A rupture in Meghan's carefully curated image. One that had been built, brick by brick, with interviews, photo ops, podcasts, and calculated silence. And now? A late-night comic had demolished it in under 7 seconds. Why? Why now? And why does this moment matter more than any Oprah sit-down, Netflix confessional, or Spotify whisper fest? Let's be clear, Meghan Markle has survived a lot. Tabloid wars, palace intrigue, fatherly betrayals, racist headlines, cold shoulders from Windsors. But what unfolded on the SNL stage that night wasn't a royal takedown. It was something worse. It was cultural rejection. And not by Buckingham Palace. By Hollywood. Yes, Hollywood. The very world Meghan spent her post-royal life trying to conquer. A place of second chances, curated comebacks, and influencer-friendly redemption arcs. The very bubble that once welcomed her with open arms and glowing red carpets. Now it turned cold. And it started with a joke. But this wasn't just about comedy. No. This was a full-blown symbolic ejection. A sign that Meghan's grip on the narrative was slipping, and fast. Because just hours after the SNL moment aired, Meghan's face appeared in an LA boutique window, plastered beneath the words, "Holiday Hypocrite," right beside photos of other so-called 2025 villains. Coincidence? Not a chance. This was the week Meghan Markle stopped being the media's misunderstood royal and became its punchline. And you have to ask yourself, how did we get here? How did the woman who once walked alongside the Queen, who delivered powerful speeches on female empowerment, who sat with Oprah and made the world gasp, end up featured in a snarky storefront, mocked on national TV, and reportedly screaming behind closed Montecito doors? Was it hubris? Was it hypocrisy? Or was it betrayal? Because as the fallout grew, the press began to whisper. Not just about SNL or the boutique display, but about a leaked group chat. About Hollywood insiders who were done defending her. About stylists, actresses, and even friends who were allegedly rolling their eyes in private long before Jost ever rolled his. And then came the phrase, Montecito diva. It spread like wildfire. And once it caught on, it was impossible to shake. But let's rewind. Because this didn't come out of nowhere. There were warning signs. Moments of tension. Cracks in the image. The Spotify grifters debacle. The Netflix fatigue. The Oprah echo chamber. The awkward charity photo ops. The red carpet stiff shoulders. Meghan's story, once about survival and reinvention, was starting to look like something else. Overexposure. And when exposure becomes overexposure, the public doesn't just move on. They turn. They flip. They laugh. That's what happened that night on SNL. And the reason it hit so hard? Meghan wasn't just mocked. She was outed. Not for something criminal or scandalous, but something subtler, more insidious in celebrity culture. Inauthenticity. The kind that grates on the very audience that once rooted for you. Because when someone tells you they're just like you, then jets off in a private plane, signs multi-million-dollar deals, lectures you on climate, and cancels appearances for mental wellness, it leaves a taste. And not a pleasant one. It builds. Quietly. Until one line on live TV detonates the whole facade. That's where we are. And the fallout is far from over. Meghan's PR team scrambled. Crisis calls. Media silence. Strategic posts. But it was like putting glitter on a house fire. The tabloids had a feast. Twitter/X spun memes in real time. TikTok users reenacted the moment with surgical savagery. Influencers, once thirsty for royal selfies, joined in. And Meghan? She reportedly flipped. Sources close to the Sussexes claimed she felt ambushed, blindsided by Hollywood's turn, furious at the holiday hypocrite label. Furious at the Montecito diva tag. Furious at the people who should have had her back and didn't. But was she really blindsided? Or did she just refuse to see the writing on the wall? That's the question echoing through every magazine headline, every podcast rant, every late-night monologue. And here's the part no one's saying out loud. This wasn't just about Meghan. It was about what she represents. To some, the woman who escaped the monarchy and found her voice. To others, the woman who monetized her victimhood and lost the plot. Two Americas, two worlds. And now, one very public humiliation. What Colin Jost said wasn't just a line. It was a mirror, held up to a woman who built her post-palace brand on relatability, advocacy, and a sprinkle of Hollywood fairy dust. But what happens when the spell wears off? When the curtain drops? When even SNL can't resist joining in? Because let's be honest, Saturday Night Live has long been the cultural litmus test. They don't waste airtime unless someone's relevance is either surging or crashing. And they chose Meghan. They targeted Meghan. Why? Because America's getting tired. Of what? Of the drama, the leaks, the pity, the preaching, the selective transparency. And that fatigue? It's not just gossip anymore. It's public sentiment. It's boutique windows and trending hashtags and sold-out mugs reading Montecito Diva. It's laughter. And laughter is the one thing you can't spin. Meghan tried. For years, she tried. To control the image. To soften the story. To frame the headlines. To center herself as the heroine. But now, the story's no longer hers. It's Hollywood's. It's ours. And we're about to unravel it all. Because what happened on that stage wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a cultural shift, a reputational unraveling, a dramatic reckoning. And what's coming next? We'll make that SNL smirk look like child's play. Because there's more. So much more. From boutique betrayals to group chat scandals. From former friends who've gone quiet to royals who've stopped pretending. From A-listers side-eyeing her on red carpets to insiders whispering the three words Meghan dreads most. She's not real. And when authenticity dies, the brand collapses. But what comes after? What does Meghan Markle do when the world stops clapping? You're about to find out. Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What does it take to shatter a brand built on royalty, trauma, and reinvention? Apparently, just one smirk and 7 chilling words. Let's go back to where it all began. The live audience didn't know what was coming. That's the magic of Saturday Night Live. You sit under the studio lights at 30 Rock, sip your complimentary drink, and wait for the chaos to unfold. There's laughter, satire, sometimes shock. But that night was different. Because when Colin Jost, sharp, unflinching, armed with that signature smirk, leaned forward at the Weekend Update desk, there was a shift. A strange hush. A split second of tension that only comes before something truly brutal is unleashed. And then it dropped. Well, in this season's list of holiday hypocrites, he said, we've got Meghan Markle, spotted shopping in $900 designer heels after reminding us all to give back to the less fortunate. Queen of Montecito, Duchess of Duazese. Boom. The crowd erupted. Some gasped. Some laughed awkwardly. Others just shouted. Those half-drunk, overly hyped types who live for a scandalous jab. But inside the studio, the energy changed. Everyone knew that wasn't just a joke. It was a hit. A direct hit. Colin didn't stumble. Didn't hesitate. He just smiled that smug, Harvard-educated, comedy club-hardened smile and moved on to the next bit like nothing happened. But something had happened. Because outside those walls, across time zones, and behind security gates in Montecito, someone else was watching. And for Meghan Markle, the moment that line aired on NBC wasn't just uncomfortable, it was catastrophic. Now, was the joke mean? Subjective. Was it calculated? Absolutely. You don't name drop a former working royal, who also happens to be an actress, philanthropist, duchess, and global media figure, unless you know what you're doing. And Colin knew. But why her? Why now? Why this moment to light the match? Let's unpack it. Because this wasn't an offhand remark. It wasn't an improv moment. That line, that holiday hypocrite dagger, it was rehearsed, approved, cleared by NBC's legal and production teams. Let that sink in. Before those 7 words ever reached the airwaves, a room full of professional adults in suits and headphones approved it. They knew exactly how Meghan would react. They predicted the fallout. And they did it anyway. Because they sensed something. They sensed a shift, a change in public sentiment, a fatigue, a collective rolling of eyes that had started slow and quiet, but was growing louder. Meghan had transformed from a woman the world once wanted to protect into someone the media now felt safe to mock. And SNL smelled blood. But still, why her? Simple. Meghan had become the symbol of something bigger. Not just royalty, not just fame, but curated fame, controlled narratives, image management on steroids. Meghan's brand wasn't built on rawness. It was built on selective vulnerability, filtered activism, and palace-adjacent storytelling. And after years of Netflix specials, podcast rants, and red carpet reemergence, the audience was no longer buying what she was selling. They weren't angry. They were tired. And tired people laugh at things they once defended. That's what SNL tapped into. And Colin Jost? He became the executioner. But here's the cruel twist. He wasn't the first to go there. Insiders had been whispering for months. Hollywood stylists, minor celebrities, writers, even red carpet photographers. There was talk of Meghan being difficult, distant, unrelatable, overstyled, and underwhelming. But no one said it on air. Until now. And the fact that it was Colin Jost, of all people, is deeply ironic. Colin is Hollywood royalty in his own right. Ivy League background. Married to Scarlett Johansson, SNL's head writer. His life is glamorous, but quiet. Luxurious, but understated. The very opposite of the loud luxury that Meghan had begun to flaunt, which made his delivery of the joke even more brutal, because it felt like a rejection, not just of Meghan's message, but of Meghan herself. A clear, cutting signal, you're not one of us anymore. But let's step back for a moment. Why did this joke hit so hard? Because it touched on something no PR team can fix, perception. Let's dissect that line again. Holiday hypocrite. Simple. Devastating. It implies moral failure without needing evidence. It plants a seed. She says one thing, but lives another. Then, spotted shopping in $900 designer heels. That's specific. It's tangible. Everyone can visualize that. Price tag guilt. Designer elitism. Public contradiction. And finally, Queen of Montecito, Duchess of Duazese. That one was personal. It wasn't just a dig at wealth or hypocrisy. It was a jab at tone, attitude. A lifestyle that lectures but doesn't live the values it preaches. It was saying, you fled the palace, Meghan, only to build a velvet throne of your own. That line, it didn't just attack her choices. It attacked her entire brand. And brands are fragile. They survive on perception, consistency, relatability. Once you lose that, once your audience starts to snicker instead of sympathize, it's over. But maybe the worst part wasn't even the joke. It was the aftermath. Because Meghan Markle, once the media's phoenix, the survivor, the comeback queen, became silent. No post, no quote, no glossy Archwell response or subtly lit Instagram story. Just silence. And that silence was deafening. Because it wasn't just a lack of comment. It was a lack of control. Meghan couldn't spin this one. She couldn't go on Oprah and cry it away. She couldn't drop a Spotify episode or unveil a new philanthropic initiative to distract us. The public had seen the smirk. They'd heard the punchline. And they'd laughed. So where was Harry during all this? Reportedly, blindsided. He hadn't watched the episode live. A friend texted him the clip. He saw it on Twitter. Sources close to the couple say he wasn't amused, but he wasn't enraged either. Because unlike Meghan, Harry's used to being the butt of jokes. He's been caricatured by the British tabloids since he was a teenager. He's heard worse. But Meghan? This was her first time being openly ridiculed by Hollywood itself. And it shook her. Badly. Because make no mistake, this wasn't just a comedy sketch. It was a public disinvitation. A message from the industry she worked so hard to enter, rebrand, and dominate. You're not untouchable anymore. And the irony is painful. Meghan Markle left the royal family because she said the scrutiny was unbearable. The judgment, the press, the racism, the headlines. And now, she's facing something arguably more brutal. Mockery, not from the press, but from her peers. That's the part that stings. That's the part no crisis manager can erase. Because once your name becomes a punchline, you're no longer shaping the story. The story is shaping you. And Meghan? She's suddenly the star of a very different kind of fairy tale. One without a hero. One without a palace. One without applause. Just a stage, a camera, and a smirk that changed everything. But remember that tension we mentioned? That weird hush just before Colin delivered the line? That wasn't nerves. It was a warning, because some people in that room knew what was coming. They'd heard whispers, seen the cue cards. They knew that once those words were said, there was no going back. And still, they didn't stop it. Which raises the question, who gave the green light? Who inside SNL, or outside of it, felt confident enough to approve the joke? Because if Meghan's circle is tight, and oh, it is, then someone, somewhere, fed the fire. Someone inside the inner circle cracked. And that's where things get really dark. Because the joke was only the beginning. What followed next would expose something far worse than comedy writers with a mean streak. It would reveal betrayal from within, because someone very close to Meghan helped it happen. And when she finds out who, it's not going to be pretty. What do you do when the world stops laughing with you and starts laughing at you? You panic. You rage. You lose control. And according to sources who claim to be shockingly close to the situation, that's exactly what happened inside the palatial walls of Meghan Markle's Montecito estate the moment the SNL clip aired nationwide. Picture it. It's 9:37 p.m. on a Saturday night in California. The fireplace is flickering. The interior is immaculate. Tastefully curated in soft neutrals, hand-selected artisan rugs, and a calming eucalyptus scent wafting in the air. Meghan is said to be sitting on the edge of her custom-upholstered couch, a half-finished mug of ginger tea in hand, when she sees it. That line, that smirk, and then the silence breaks. According to multiple whispered reports, some even leaked to anonymous gossip forums within hours, Meghan snapped. One source claimed, you could hear her screaming from outside the gate. That wasn't TV volume outrage. That was primal. Another alleged, she said something like, they promised me this would never happen here. There were reports of rapid phone calls to publicists. Panic. Demands for immediate statements. Crisis PR calls. One staff member, who allegedly asked to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation, described the mood as utter chaos. Not embarrassment. Rage. Because here's the truth Meghan didn't want to admit, even to herself. This wasn't supposed to happen in America. In Britain? Sure. The tabloids. The palace loyalists. The royal rota sharks. She expected the knives there. But Hollywood? That was her turf. Her playground. Her comeback zone. The place where she was supposed to be safe. Remember, this was the industry she walked away from royalty for. The place where she'd once built her identity, long before tiaras, protocol, and photo calls. Meghan believed in the power of American media. And for years, American media returned the favor. Oprah gave her the most powerful interview platform on earth. Netflix backed her with millions. Spotify gave her a global microphone. Time magazine put her and Harry on the cover. The industry protected her. But now, SNL had fired a shot, and she couldn't stop the bleeding. So what does a woman who's obsessed with narrative control do when the narrative turns on her? She spins. And fast. Sources inside Archewell claim there was an immediate attempt to downplay the situation. A plan was drafted, quickly. Damage control. No response to SNL directly, but perhaps a reaffirming post about compassion. Maybe a photo of Meghan volunteering. Something soft. Something on brand. But nothing was posted. Why? Because according to one insider, she wanted blood, not sympathy. She didn't want to look calm. She didn't want to look composed. She wanted revenge. And not just on Colin Jost, but on everyone. Because in Meghan's mind, the joke didn't come out of nowhere. Someone fed it. Someone gave the writers that idea. And that meant one thing. There was a leak. The hunt began immediately. Staff phones were reportedly checked. Text chains examined. Loose friends questioned. She allegedly even reactivated a dormant WhatsApp account to scroll through old group messages from her LA inner circle, models, stylists, actresses, influencers, looking for signs. Sarcasm. Passive aggression. That's when the phrase surfaced. Montecito diva. It wasn't part of the SNL line, but Meghan knew what it meant. And she knew where it came from. A now infamous group chat. A chat Meghan was once a part of. Let's rewind. In 2021, after stepping back from royal duties, Meghan reconnected with some of her LA contacts. People from her Suits days. Women she'd met at charity events. A few high-profile stylists. one celebrity chef. They created a private group, intended to be a safe space for support, collaboration, and yes, a little gossip. But like all group chats, it got messy. Inside jokes, petty comments, ego clashes, and, eventually, mockery. It started with harmless teasing. But then, somewhere around mid-2023, the tone changed. Someone reportedly called Meghan unreachable. Another allegedly said, "She talks like she's still giving that Oprah interview every time we see her." And then the nickname was born, Montecito Diva. It was supposed to be private. It wasn't. Fast forward to now, and that nickname is everywhere. Online, on mugs, on t-shirts, in tweets, in late-night segments. It's a meme. And for Meghan, it's a betrayal so deep, it cuts through even her royal traumas. Because the British press may have mocked her, but her friends? They were supposed to be different. They weren't. One source described the scene in the mansion the morning after the SNL episode. She was pacing, mumbling to herself, saying things like, "They were never really my friends. They wanted proximity, not loyalty." And then came the calls. Dozens of them. People in her circle, some who hadn't spoken to her in months, suddenly felt the need to check in. But Meghan wasn't interested in check-ins. She was interested in confessions. She allegedly grilled multiple friends. "Did you ever use that word? Did you ever say that about me?" Most denied it. One went silent, and one was honest. That honesty exploded everything. Because it turned out, the Montecito Diva label didn't just come from one person. It came from many. A slow accumulation of frustrations. Canceled lunches. Cold stares at events. Preachy DMs. Meghan's need to dominate every conversation with causes, speeches, and subtle brags. One friend reportedly said, "It stopped feeling like a friendship and started feeling like a press tour." That line, more than the SNL jab, broke her. Because for someone who has fought so hard to be seen, to be understood, the idea that even her own circle saw her as performative? Unforgivable. And that's when Meghan's infamous cutting season began. Insiders say she started purging. Contacts deleted. Emails ignored. Invites revoked. A former assistant claimed that Meghan called this her reset era. But behind closed doors, it was more of a scorched earth policy. And all the while, the silence continued. No public comment. No Instagram story. No statement of hurt, but rising above. Because she wasn't rising above. She was spiraling. And Harry? He didn't know what to do. Sources say he urged calm. That he suggested not overreacting. That made things worse. One reported, quote, "You don't understand, Harry. They've turned me into a joke. I can't come back from this." And maybe she's right. Because you can survive criticism. You can survive scandal. But surviving mockery? That's different. Especially when you built your entire brand on being taken seriously. On being aspirational. What happens when the aspirational image cracks? When people no longer want to be you, they want to laugh at you. You crumble. Unless you fight back. And Meghan? She's getting ready to fight. But what she doesn't know yet, what's brewing just under the surface, is that someone close to her is still talking, still leaking, still feeding the fire. And the next revelation won't just come from an SNL stage. It'll come from within her own gated walls. And it will make Holiday Hypocrite look like a love letter. What happens when the city that once adored you, plastered your face across billboards, gushed over your fashion, and embraced your Hollywood royalty narrative, suddenly turns your image into a punchline in a shop window? You can ignore a late-night joke. You can even pretend not to see the memes. But you cannot ignore your own face, taped to a boutique window, beneath bold black letters that scream, "Holiday Hypocrite." And that's exactly what Meghan Markle was confronted with just 48 hours after the now infamous SNL line detonated across the internet. This time, it wasn't television. It wasn't streaming. It was real life. And it was local. Let's talk about Kitson, LA. If you're not familiar, Kitson isn't your average department store. It's a cultural landmark. Flashy, self-aware, savagely petty. The boutique has become infamous in Los Angeles for its unapologetic naughty list window displays, year after year calling out celebrities, influencers, politicians, and yes, even royals. But this time, it hit differently. Because Meghan Markle, the self-described advocate for mindfulness, authenticity, and compassionate leadership, found herself center stage in the store's latest Christmas display of 2025 villains. right next to Kanye West and Sam Bankman-Fried, and an oversized cutout of Elon Musk with devil horns and a Santa hat. There she was, wearing a sharp white blazer, a perfectly arched brow, clutching a Dior bag worth more than most rent checks. And underneath, in big, unforgiving capital letters, Meghan Markle, Montecito's holiday hypocrite. No context, no explanation. Just that smirking headshot glaring out at LA's trendiest shoppers like some pop culture wanted poster. Within minutes, the display went viral. TikTok influencers lined up to film themselves doing mock interviews in front of Meghan's image. Instagram models posed with their oat milk lattes, tagging it Queen of Contradiction. Even one of Meghan's former stylists, yes, former, quietly liked a photo of the display on Instagram. So how did this happen? How did Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, media mogul, feminist icon, end up in a boutique window display next to disgraced billionaires and scandal-plagued artists? Let's rewind. Kitson's window displays are curated weeks in advance. That means someone, before the SNL broadcast, decided Meghan had earned her place in the Holiday Hypocrites collection. This wasn't reactive. This was planned. Which begs the question, who tipped them off? Because that label, Holiday Hypocrite, didn't come from thin air. It wasn't just about SNL. It was about a pattern, a lifestyle contradiction that had been simmering beneath the surface for months. Here's the timeline. November 12th. Meghan gives a speech at a charity event urging wealthy donors to spend less on things and more on impact. November 14th. She's photographed leaving a luxury boutique in Beverly Hills carrying shopping bags, reportedly after dropping over $14,000 in a single spree. November 20th. Archewell releases a statement about compassion fatigue and the importance of inner simplicity. November 22nd. She's spotted boarding a private jet to New York for a 3-hour appearance at a gala. It wasn't the actions. It was the optics. And in Hollywood, optics are currency. Meghan's public narrative had been so tightly controlled, so carefully curated, that any misstep suddenly became magnified, exposed. And now, with the SNL line still trending, Kitson LA had the perfect excuse to capitalize. But let's get personal. How did Meghan find out? According to someone allegedly close to her team, it was a well-meaning friend who sent the photo. Just a simple text. OMG, have you seen this? No caption, just the image, the boutique, her face, the label. And that's when Meghan reportedly froze. She didn't scream this time. She didn't throw anything. She just sat in silence for a solid 2 minutes, staring at her phone, as if looking long enough would make it disappear. But it didn't, because it wasn't just humiliation. It was location. Kitson isn't buried in some suburban outlet mall. It's right there on Robertson Boulevard, smack in the middle of West Hollywood. A place Meghan used to shop. A place where Paps once snapped her smiling in $400 jeans, iced matcha in hand, sunglasses perched like a crown. And now, that same window reflected her fall from grace. It was personal, and it was public, and it was intentional. Let's talk about intent. Because Kitson doesn't just mock for fun. Their windows are statements, commentary, gossip as art. So why Meghan? Why now? Some insiders claim it was the hypocrisy. Others believe it was her perceived tone deafness. But one industry executive summed it up perfectly. She stopped being aspirational. She started being annoying. That's a death sentence in Hollywood. A-listers can be rich. They can be preachy. They can even be problematic. But they cannot be boring and holier-than-thou at the same time. And that's what Meghan had become, to a growing number of disillusioned fans. The Meghan who once lit up screens in suits with relatable charm was now delivering wordy statements about global equity from the comfort of a $14 million estate. She was photographed in $5,000 coats while posting quotes about mindful minimalism. The contradictions weren't just noticeable, they were marketable. And so, Kitson printed the poster, framed it in fake snow, and turned her into an attraction. But the true gut punch came from within her own camp. Because someone close, allegedly knew about the display before it went up, and said nothing. Let that sink in. A friend, a stylist, a former colleague, an insider, someone who could have warned her didn't. And Meghan, still seething from the SNL blow, took that silence as yet another betrayal. It triggered a full internal review. Not just of her current team, but of everyone. PR consultants, event coordinators, even her inner social circle. Who had seen the poster? Who had liked the post? Who was quietly rooting for her downfall? The investigation, yes, that's reportedly the word used, resulted in at least 3 people being phased out. Not fired, not called out, just quietly removed. 1 minute, they were in her inner circle. The next, they were unfollowed, uninvited, gone. Because if Meghan couldn't control the narrative anymore, she would at least control the cast. But here's the kicker. Kitson didn't back down. They doubled down. The day after the backlash began brewing, they posted another image on Instagram with a caption that sent chills through Meghan's already splintering PR machine. We don't print lies. We print reputations. And under that, another tag. Hashtag Holiday Hypocrites 2025. The comments? Brutal, but telling. One user wrote, "She wanted the Hollywood spotlight. Well, here it is." Another said, "If the crown fits, wear it, Duchess." And one simply posted a meme of Meghan from her Oprah interview. Tears streaming, next to the text, "Did we ever ask what she was doing for us?" Ouch. But here's the most haunting part. This moment, this seemingly shallow boutique stunt, hit harder than any tabloid headline or British royal rebuke. Because it was homegrown. It wasn't the UK press. It wasn't palace insiders. It was Los Angeles. Her own turf. Her sanctuary. Turning on her. And that terrified her more than anything. Because if Meghan can't win LA, she can't win at all. But what she doesn't realize, this isn't just backlash. It's a chain reaction. And the next link starts with a group chat she thought was private, but someone had been screenshotting everything. The next blow is coming. And this time, it won't be from a boutique window. It'll be from her own words, shared by someone she once trusted. What's worse than being mocked on live television? Worse than seeing your image slapped on a storefront window beneath the words "Holiday Hypocrite"? Worse than being the talk of late-night comedy and whispered celebrity dinners? Being betrayed by the people you once let in. And for Meghan Markle, that betrayal didn't come from the British tabloids, nor from some bitter half-sibling looking for airtime. It came from an iPhone, from a chat thread, from the very people she once trusted to shield her from this exact kind of media firestorm. Because long before that SNL joke ever aired, before the Kitson boutique dared to label her Montecito's Holiday Hypocrite, the real damage was already being done. In private, in texts, and eventually, in leaks. Let's talk about the inner circle. Back in 2021, shortly after Megxit rocked the monarchy and Meghan and Harry settled into their lavish Montecito estate, insiders say she began building a new network. Not palace staff, not titled aristocrats, not even the Suits-era friends she once FaceTimed with over wine. This was a new circle, West Coast royalty, the sort of people who weren't British peers, but LA peers. Fashion stylists, wellness coaches, celebrity duelists, philanthropic influencers, crystal healers, and a few low-key A-listers who loved to name-drop, but hated to be name-dropped. Together, this carefully curated friend group operated in a space that was equal parts activism and aesthetics. Think silent meditation brunches, matching vision boards, and weekend retreats in Topanga Canyon. But what bound them together more than anything? The group chat, named Sun Circle. A not-so-subtle nod to Meghan's public image, light, warmth, empowerment. And for a while, it was everything. Daily check-ins, affirmations, updates on events, outfits, press tours, complaints about the media, compliments about each other's brand launches, memes, horoscopes, support. But slowly things shifted. And that shift started around mid-2023, right after Meghan's Spotify deal imploded. Remember the fallout? The abrupt cancellation of Archetypes. The public gut punch from Spotify's Bill Simmons, calling Harry and Meghan grifters. The internet mocking her for podcasting once and collecting millions. That was the first real stumble in Meghan's post-royal brand. And the Sun Circle felt it. The tone in the group began to change. Gone were the glowing emojis and excited voice notes. Now came silence, distance, and then sarcasm. Someone dropped a link to an article. Meghan lectures us on minimalism, then launches $3,000 cashmere collections. Then came a comment. Queen of Contradictions crown nail polish medium light skin tone. And then someone, no one knows exactly who, typed it. Our Montecito diva does it again. It was meant to be cheeky, private. But what Meghan didn't know was that someone in that group was screenshotting everything. For weeks, possibly months. And when the SNL joke finally hit the airwaves, and Meghan's public image began its free fall, that someone acted. Suddenly, anonymous tips began popping up in blind gossip columns. One screenshot showed Meghan allegedly boasting about repositioning Archewell into a luxury wellness empire. Another captured her writing that the British press couldn't understand brand synergy if it slapped them with a designer bag. Another? A selfie from a home spa day, complete with crystals, champagne, and a caption that read, "Even Messiah figures need facials woman dipping hand light skin tone." Not exactly the tone of a struggling royal mother fighting for privacy and peace. But here's the kicker. The leak wasn't just about mockery. It revealed something far more damaging. Arrogance. Because while the world saw Meghan as a victim of institutional cruelty, the Sun Circle screenshots painted a different picture. A woman obsessed with perception, addicted to press coverage, constantly benchmarking her influence against legacy brands like Oprah, Michelle Obama, and yes, even Princess Diana. One source who viewed the leaked messages described them as brand strategy dressed up as sisterhood. It wasn't just Meghan. It was Meghan Inc. And in the world of celebrities, that's not a crime. But when you build your image on vulnerability, truth, and compassion, and then turn around and treat your personal chats like PR war rooms, people notice. The hypocrisy stings. And this time, the internet didn't hold back. Montecito diva started trending globally. TikTokers made parody skits of Meghan directing her staff like Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. Fashion bloggers joked about starting their own Sun Circle, but with better lighting and less hypocrisy. And Meghan? She went dark. No appearances. No Zoom chats. No new photos. Because this wasn't just a bad week. It was a reputational landslide. And the worst part? She didn't know who had leaked the chat. She still doesn't. Inside the mansion, paranoia grew like mold. Every staff member was seen as a potential mole. PR firms were quietly dropped. Brand consultants were ghosted. Friends were paused. Even her assistant, who had been with her since the final seasons of Suits, was reportedly asked to sign an additional NDA, despite already having one. It was crisis mode, but not just externally, internally, emotionally, because when you've spent years crafting a story of redemption, of escape, of rebirth, and suddenly people see you as just another fame chaser in Kashmir, the identity fractures. And for Meghan, who'd wrapped herself in the language of healing and light, the realization that she was now the villain in someone else's narrative, that was unbearable. She reportedly demanded a forensic investigation. Phone records, digital forensics, metadata. Someone would be found, she vowed. But as of now, nothing. The chat leaker has vanished. The group has gone silent. The Sun Circle is dead. And Meghan? She's left standing in the ashes of a private world turned painfully public. But here's where the story gets even darker. Because someone in that group, before disappearing, did one last thing. They allegedly forwarded some of those messages to a friend working on the SNL writing team. Yes, the timing matches. The jokes. The language. The Montecito diva nickname. The contradiction between Meghan's luxury lifestyle and her humble healer messaging. It was all there in those chats. Before Colin Jost ever stepped on stage. So when Meghan screamed at her team, someone gave them the material. She wasn't wrong. They did. And now, she knows it. But she doesn't know who. And that fear, that not knowing, is rotting her from the inside. Because as she tries to rebuild her image, realign her brand, and resurface in public, everyone looks suspicious. Every stylist, every publicist, every assistant, every friend. And there's one more bombshell in those chats. Something that hasn't leaked yet. But the person who leaked the first batch still has it, still holding it. And it's not just snarky. It's not just unfiltered. It's damning. Because it suggests that Meghan wasn't just trying to rebrand herself. She may have been trying to reframe her own history. That message could rewrite everything. And if it drops, there won't be a comeback speech. No Oprah special will save her. Because when betrayal comes from within, there is no sanctuary. There is no palace. There is no circle. Only the fallout. And what comes next will make even the SNL moment look merciful. What does it take for one of America's most measured, apolitical, and clean-cut comedians to take aim at a former duchess on live television? Why Colin Jost? Why that line? And why now? Because let's be honest, Colin Jost isn't exactly known for taking savage shots. He's not Ricky Gervais. He's not Bill Maher. He doesn't go for blood. His brand is more clever than cruel, more Ivy League than gutter punch. And yet, when he leaned into the camera that fateful night and unleashed those 7 damning words, Queen of Montecito, Duchess of Duazze, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't flippant. It was targeted. Surgical. It was the moment Hollywood's velvet gloves came off. But first, we need to understand who Colin Jost is beneath the dry grin, tailored suit, and perfectly timed punchlines. Because to get to the heart of why Meghan became his target, we have to look at the man who delivered the blow. Colin Jost is no outsider. He's been writing for Saturday Night Live since 2005. Head writer, Weekend Update, co-anchor, graduate of Harvard University, editor of the Harvard Lampoon, married to Scarlett Johansson, one of Hollywood's most respected actresses, socially connected, politically cautious, and known for threading the needle between sharp commentary and polite distance. In other words, he doesn't miss. He doesn't fire unless he knows where the shot is going. And that's what makes the Meghan moment so chilling. Because according to insiders familiar with the SNL writing room that week, the joke almost didn't make it in. That's right. It wasn't just a funny line someone pitched. It was debated, reviewed, and then pushed up the ladder for clearance. Because everyone knew it would cause an explosion. But the surprising part? Colin reportedly insisted. He pushed for it, made the case, not because he hates Meghan, but because he was tired. Tired of the hypocrisy, tired of the media circus, tired of celebrities claiming victimhood while playing puppet master behind the scenes. As one anonymous staffer leaked to a gossip blog shortly after the episode aired, Colin said, "If you're going to preach to the world, expect the world to clap back." Boom. So, what was it about Meghan that finally pushed him there? Let's rewind. Over the past 2 years, Colin had reportedly grown increasingly frustrated with what some in the comedy world were calling celebrity sanctimony. The performative activism, the awards show speeches masked as sermons, the relatable podcasts recorded in multi-million-dollar mansions. And Meghan became the ultimate symbol of that contradiction. One former SNL guest host, who worked closely with the writing team, claimed that Meghan had been on their radar for a while, not as a punching bag, but as a question. Is she fair game? That's the thing. Because for a long time, Meghan wasn't. The public saw her as the bullied duchess, the biracial woman who married into the stiffest institution on earth and was chewed up by its cold protocols. The woman who cried on Oprah's couch and made the world pause. You couldn't touch her. Not even comedy dared. But something changed in 2024. A shift in energy. She wasn't the underdog anymore. She was the brand. The mogul. The lifestyle guru with big speeches, small transparency, and massive expectations. And Colin saw that. He reportedly felt that if Meghan wanted the perks of Hollywood, the wealth, the platform, the admiration, then she needed to play by its rules. And in Hollywood, you don't get to be untouchable forever. Eventually, someone cracks the bubble. So he waited, watched, and then he struck. And the SNL team backed him. But the most fascinating detail? Colin didn't just write one Meghan joke. He wrote 3. That's right. According to internal documents from the episode's production, which someone leaked to a comedy gossip site post-airing, there were 2 other Meghan digs that were considered and cut. One went like this. Meghan Markle urges us to unplug and be present, right after uploading 200 hours of footage about herself to Netflix. Another? The Duchess of Sussex says Christmas is about giving, not receiving. Unless it's a $150 million media deal. Brutal. But in the end, the team chose the holiday hypocrite line. Why? Because it landed the cleanest. Because it captured everything. The contradiction, the public's growing fatigue, the image versus reality tension, in 7 sharp, unforgettable words. Queen of Montecito. Duchess of Duazze. A line destined to echo. But the real dagger? Is that Colin Jost has never met Meghan Markle. Never worked with her, never spoken to her, and yet, he knew exactly how to strike. Because he didn't need to know Meghan. He knew the character, The one projected by endless glossy interviews and Spotify monologues. The one floating above the Hollywood ecosystem, never grounded, always curated. And as a comedy writer, Colin's job is to pop bubbles. He saw one. He popped it. But here's where things get especially interesting. Multiple insiders believe Colin didn't come up with the line alone. Someone fed it to him. Not verbatim, but conceptually. As in, look into this. The contradictions. The group chat stuff. The boutique stuff. It's all there. And if that's true, if someone from within Meghan's orbit, a former friend, staffer, colleague, contributed to the joke, then this wasn't just comedy. It was a hit job. Strategically executed. Publicly detonated. Colin just pulled the trigger. And Meghan felt it. Immediately. Because this wasn't Britain sniping from across the Atlantic. This was home turf. Hollywood. Her new kingdom. Rebelling. But she didn't lash out publicly. She couldn't. Not yet. Because how do you fight back against laughter? How do you refute a joke without looking humorless? That's the trap. One of comedy's oldest weapons. It disarms the powerful. And Meghan had become, whether she knew it or not, powerful. Untouchable. Smug. And that's when comedy strikes. You can't sue it. You can't silence it. You can't cry it away. All you can do is take the hit. And try to recover. But what Meghan didn't know was that the joke was only part one. Because Colin's line lit the fuse. And then, other dominoes began to fall. Influencers. Stylists. Paparazzi. Former allies. Even one of her own former producers allegedly liked a tweet about the joke. The ripple effect was immediate. And that's how comedy works in today's world. It doesn't just make you laugh. It sets a tone. And the tone had officially turned. Meghan wasn't the Duchess anymore. She was the diva. She wasn't the underdog. She was the brand. And brands are fair game. Even for someone like Colin Jost. Even from a show that once fawned over her royal romance. Even from Hollywood. Especially from Hollywood. Because if the palace had gloves and the press had knives, comedy has scalpels. And Colin Jost just showed the world how to use one. But what Meghan still doesn't know is that this wasn't just about one joke. The SNL writers got more from someone close. And one of the ideas they didn't use might still be in the chamber. And if Meghan tries to clap back, they're ready. Because the next line will cut deeper. And it's not about her image. It's about her past. Something even her inner circle begged her never to bring up again. They tried to warn her. She didn't listen. Or maybe, more accurately, she refused to believe it. Because when you're Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, Queen of Narrative, and every tabloid article, podcast interview, and red carpet moment has revolved around your version of events, you don't hear warnings. You hear jealousy. You hear envy. You hear threats to control. So when that unexpected call came in, just over a week before the SNL joke detonated across the globe, Meghan did what she's allegedly done for years. She dismissed it, shrugged it off, laughed even. But the warning was real. And if she had listened, she could have avoided the humiliation that followed. Let's go back. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon in Montecito. According to a well-placed insider, Meghan was in her kitchen, sipping on a herbal concoction her wellness advisor had recently introduced, some blend of turmeric, beetroot, and dragon fruit mint to clear negativity. Her phone buzzed. Caller ID, private. She answered. The voice on the other end? Familiar. Not a friend. Not quite a foe. Someone from her pre-royal days. A producer turned publicist with ties to both Hollywood and SNL's inner circle. Let's call her Grace. And Grace didn't mince words. They're going to mention you, she said. Who? SNL. Weekend update. It's not brutal, but it's not kind either. And it's coming from Colin. That means it'll land. He never shoots unless he knows he's got the room. There was a pause. Then, a cool response from Meghan. They wouldn't dare. Grace pressed. They've got material. Boutique hypocrisy. That Montecito diva, nicknames floating around. And someone from your world has been talking. Another pause. This time longer. Then Meghan, allegedly with that signature diplomatic chill, replied, I'm not concerned. They've made worse jokes about other people. Grace tried once more. They're using a nickname that started in your private circle, Meg. If you're smart, you'll preempt it. Get ahead of the punchline. Make a statement. Go live on Archwell. Post a reel with Harry. Reclaim the narrative before they define it for you. But Meghan didn't. She didn't see the need. Why? Because from her point of view, Comedy wasn't her enemy. The palace? Sure. The British tabloids? Absolutely. But comedy? She'd always viewed herself as above that. She had jokes made at her expense before, mild jabs on talk shows, internet memes, TikTok impersonations, but nothing had ever really stuck. Not in a way that challenged her brand. She believed this would be the same. And more importantly, she believed she was too important to be mocked without backlash. After all, who dares mock a woman who escaped royal torment, battled racism in the press, spoke to Oprah, walked hand in hand with Gloria Steinem, and was once named one of Time's most influential? Turns out, Colin Jost dared. And Meghan's refusal to listen to Grace's warning would cost her dearly. Because here's the irony. If she had posted anything, a behind-the-scenes clip, a playful video, even a casual moment in sweatpants feeding the chickens, it would have softened the blow, humanized her. Instead, she stayed silent, polished, untouchable, and that silence made the punchline land harder. But there's more. Grace wasn't the only one who tried to warn her. There was another message, from someone within her own orbit, an Archewell board member, young, progressive, media-savvy. Someone who had always supported Meghan but reportedly began growing uncomfortable with the direction of her brand. He sent a discreet email the following day. Subject line, heads up. Narrative shift incoming. The body of the message was brief but piercing. This won't be the last joke. There's a shift happening. The culture's catching up to the contradictions. You can either evolve with it or be eaten by it. Powerful words. Words Meghan never replied to. Instead, she doubled down. She reportedly told her team, "We control the story. We always have. We always will." But did they? Really? Because as the SNL joke trended across every platform, X, TikTok, Instagram, even YouTube Shorts, there was no Archewell response. No statement from Harry. No clapback video. No influencer defense campaign. Nothing. The silence wasn't power. It was paralysis. And it wasn't just the public watching. It was Hollywood. The producers she wanted to work with. The directors she hoped would cast her. The investors considering Archewell partnerships. They saw the joke. Then they saw no reaction. That's when the phone stopped ringing. Deals slowed. Emails went unreturned. Because Hollywood doesn't hate drama, but it despises dead brands. And make no mistake, by failing to get ahead of the story, Meghan let her brand flatline. She let the world assume she was the diva. She was the hypocrite. She was the woman mocked in a boutique window and roasted on national television without a single clapback. And here's the gut punch. By not reacting, she confirmed it. But why didn't she move? Why no statement? Why no TikTok? Why no media push? Because, insiders say, Meghan didn't just ignore the warnings. She miscalculated the audience. She thought her base would rise to defend her, that the Sussex squad would mobilize, that feminist voices would rally, that A-listers would denounce the joke as misogynistic. None of that happened. In fact, some quietly distanced themselves. Others liked the tweet, and a few allegedly texted each other laughing emojis. Because what Meghan failed to grasp, and what Grace tried desperately to warn her about, is that cultural goodwill has an expiration date. And when that date passes, the jokes aren't just tolerated, they're welcomed. So when Colin delivered the line, and the crowd howled with laughter, it wasn't just about humor. It was about permission. The world was giving itself permission to stop pretending, to stop tiptoeing, to stop acting like Meghan Markle was a sacred topic above mockery, above satire, above scrutiny. That moment wasn't an attack. It was a release, a breaking of the fourth wall, a cultural exhale. And Meghan missed it. She could have turned the joke into an opportunity. She could have leaned in, posted a self-aware clip, a wink, a toast, even a tweet that said, "Well played, SNL." Even a duchess can take a joke. It would have shattered the ice, humanized her. But she didn't, because she didn't see it as an opportunity. She saw it as betrayal. And when that's your default lens, every criticism becomes war. Every punchline becomes a threat. Every warning becomes noise. And you forget something vital. Not everyone is out to get you. Sometimes, they're just trying to help you avoid the iceberg. But Meghan? She was too busy rearranging the furniture on the deck. And now, the ship is listing. And those who try to help? They've gone quiet. Grace hasn't called since. The board member has withdrawn. Even a well-known PR firm in LA, one Meghan allegedly considered hiring last year, has stopped taking her team's calls. Why? Because they know what's coming. Another hit. Another leak. Another moment that will make SNL look like an opening act. Because Meghan missed the warning. And the next line is already being written by someone very close. And when it hits the air, there will be no more chances to rewrite the story. Just when Meghan thought it couldn't get worse. Just when the memes were finally slowing down. Just when the hashtags were starting to fade, they came back. Like a ghost from a scandalous Christmas past. The Markles. And this time, they didn't knock. They kicked the door wide open. Because while Meghan was licking her wounds in Montecito, bracing for the next blow from comedy writers and PR blogs, her estranged father and half-sister were already rehearsing their sound bites for the cameras. And they couldn't have picked a more humiliating moment. It started with a headline. Small, tucked between stories about the SNL drama and the kitchen window display. Thomas Markle breaks silence. She's not the victim anymore. It ran in a tabloid. Most people scroll past on their phones without reading. But Meghan read it. Twice. And then came the video. Thomas Markle, disheveled, older now, slower, but still somehow knowing exactly when to strike, appeared in a pre-recorded interview with an Australian morning show. His voice was shaky, but the words were razor-sharp. She wanted fame. She got it. But she doesn't want the consequences. You can't preach about compassion when you've abandoned your own family. Maybe now people understand what we've been saying all along. Each line was carefully designed, weaponized, calibrated not just to reopen old wounds, but to twist the knife while the world was watching. But Thomas wasn't alone this time. Right behind him, poised, smug, eyes glittering with vindication, was Samantha Markle. And Samantha didn't hold back. Oh no, she had waited for this. For years. This was her moment. She opened with a smirk. I don't like to say I told you so, but we warned the world. Then she went in, line after line. Meghan plays the victim better than she plays a duchess. She fooled Oprah, fooled Hollywood, but not forever. What kind of person lets their father beg for contact on national television and still ignores him? And just like that, the world remembered. The other Markle drama. The one Meghan had desperately tried to erase. The family she'd buried beneath palace statements and documentary edits. And here they were, resurrected, backlit by Meghan's most humiliating PR week since Megxit itself. And the timing? Devastating. Because until now, the public had largely dismissed Thomas and Samantha as bitter opportunists, clout chasers, the estranged relatives with sob stories and blurry photos. But now, suddenly, they didn't seem so outrageous. Because now, the audience that once defended Meghan was rethinking everything. They remembered how she said she wrote heartfelt letters to her father. They remembered how those letters mysteriously found their way into the press. They remembered how, during the Oprah interview, she said she hadn't spoken to him in years, and then later revealed he tried to call after her miscarriage. They remembered the selective nature of her storytelling, the contradictions, and suddenly, Samantha Markle's toxic half-sister narrative didn't seem as easy to dismiss. But let's pause for a second. Was this coordinated? Did Thomas and Samantha know about the SNL joke in advance? Did they time their reemergence for maximum pain? One tabloid insider claimed Samantha had been sitting on an interview request for weeks and waited to accept until Meghan's backlash started trending. A cold move? Absolutely. But brilliant in its cruelty. Because here's the thing. The Markle family has always operated like vultures circling a PR carcass. And Meghan just gave them fresh meat. And this time, they weren't playing defense. They were owning the moment. In fact, according to unverified leaks, Samantha is shopping a new book proposal. The working title? The Montecito Mirage, My Sister the Brand. Yes, seriously. One publisher has allegedly offered a six-figure advance if she includes new unseen childhood letters and more damning details from Meghan's early LA years. Meghan's legal team is reportedly on high alert. But there's only so much you can do when the attacks come from your own blood. Especially blood you've already disavowed. Because here's the bitter truth Meghan's now facing. She can handle SNL. She can handle a rogue boutique. She can even handle the betrayal of friends leaking private texts. But her own family? That's the wound that never closes. That's the PR nightmare that keeps crawling back from the grave. And the worst part? The public loves it. The drama. The dysfunction. The Shakespearean tension of royalty versus broken roots. You couldn't script it better if you tried. Hollywood's eating it up. Late-night hosts joke about the Markle cinematic universe. Podcasters dissect the dynamics between Meghan and her estranged kin like they're breaking down a Game of Thrones subplot. And Meghan? She's drowning in it. Because there's no statement that can cleanly separate her from the family she was born into. No amount of Duchess decorum or curated Instagram reels can erase the man who shares her DNA and keeps showing up on TV. But let's not forget, Thomas Markle wasn't always the villain. He was the sympathetic father, once. The retiree who paid for her acting school, helped her get her first headshots, lit up when she got cast on Suits. But then, the wedding debacle, the staged paparazzi photos, the leaked letters, and after that, silence. Meghan cut him off. And now, he's back. And so is every ugly headline that comes with him. And here's what no one's saying out loud. What Meghan's team is too afraid to admit. This isn't just about family drama. It's about credibility. Because every time Thomas Markle speaks, every time Samantha hits a new podcast circuit, every time a blurry family photo resurfaces from the depths of Facebook, the carefully polished narrative Meghan has spent years building starts to crack. And right now, it's crumbling fast. But here's the real bombshell. One of the tabloids covering Thomas's return dropped a chilling teaser. A voice memo, allegedly recorded during Meghan's early days in Hollywood. Unreleased. Unverified. But in it, she's heard complaining about Thomas long before the royal drama began. And if that memo leaks, it will shatter the last threads of public sympathy she still clings to regarding her father. Because in that recording, if real, Meghan reportedly says something cold, something calculated, something like, he served his purpose. Now he just causes problems. Harsh, unforgiving. But if true, it changes everything. And the Markle family knows it. They're taunting her with it, daring her to react. Because if Meghan goes after them publicly, they'll drop it. But if she stays silent, they control the narrative. And right now, Thomas and Samantha are planning another sit-down interview, this time with a UK outlet. Why? Because British audiences never bought Meghan's story wholesale. And now, they're thirsty for more. Meghan? She's trapped. Attack, and she looks like a heartless daughter. Ignore them, and they dominate the headlines. Either way, the past is back. And it's louder than ever. But what Meghan doesn't realize, someone inside Hollywood is helping them amplify it. A name she never expected. A name she once welcomed into her circle. And what that person is about to leak makes the Markle family jabs look like child's play.